welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 206 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we'll be discussing chapter 62 of A Storm of Swords. That's Jaime 7.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter. We're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully, we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes for extra information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, sir?
I am doing all right. It was a bit of an ordeal for me to get into my recording room here.
Do tell.
So you are very familiar with the fact that my house sits on a bit of a slope.
Yes, it does.
Slopey front yard, house, slopey backyard. It's like
right,
if my house wasn't in the way, it'd be the perfect sled riding hill.
Yes, it would be quite the hill, yes.
Yes. And so we discovered that our basement floor was kind of falling away with the slope of the hill. So you've got the carpet goes up to the
wall.
And what's the trim on the baseboard?
Right.
And
in
most
skirting board for our English listeners.
Okay. In most of the basement, it goes right up to it. But at the far ends of the back of the house, it was below the baseboard. So it had started to fall to the point where you could see between the baseboard and the carpet. So
that seems kind of fundamental.
It does. Which is why we had to get it addressed. They came this afternoon to do it, so we had to move all of the furniture to this side of the basement. So
was that the solution?
Yes, and now we're good. Just keep anything off of that side.
It's like a seesaw, Mackelly. You're going to put weight on this side.
It'll pop that side right back up. But in order to get to this room, I had to go over, under, and around about 5 different pieces of furniture. So
what was their solution? Just like a wider piece of baseboard to hide the crack?
Not for what they charged us. It better not have been the solution. I should have been watching more closely. So what they do is they drill holes into the concrete. We've already had to have this done in our garage. Our garage had a more significant issue.
Oh, so you knew this was
yes.
The basic idea, okay.
And we knew the cost, so we were prepared for it. They drill holes into the concrete and then pump this poly material down in there, and then it hardens and it lifts as it hardens.
So it goes underneath the concrete, and
yes.
then when it hardens, it lifts it up. Interesting.
And it's twofold. It goes into the concrete, it goes under the concrete, lifts it, but it also seals out the cracks where any water might dig out the additional earth.
Wow.
So
really interesting.
Yeah, the three nice young guys, and they did some side work for us off the books.
Okay,
which,
good.
I won't give the company name, but my driveway's got quite a slope to it too, and there's some issues in there. And they're like, here, if you cut us a check for this amount to this guy's personal bank account, and we will do all this work for you for about a quarter of what the company would have charged.
That's nice. Nice.
And we know what the company would have charged because we got a quote for all that work from the company, and it was about a quarter of what the company would have charged.
Yeah,
so
they're going to take their piece.
Yeah, Stacy's like, hey, if we ever need any other work, how do I get any more off the books type work? So
well. If you do, Carson is very careful to sort of like our checkbook. She writes in whatever the other part of the checkbook is. She records every check she writes.
Right.
So you can just refer back, and then you've got the guy's name. Yeah.
Oh, right. True. Yes.
And that story kind of reminds me of. I'm pretty sure I've told this on the pod, but when I went doing archery, Carson bought me an archery lesson.
Yes, I've heard many a good story from that one archery lesson. I keep missing low and to the left. We'll aim up and to the right.
That's the bit that it reminded me of. Just yeah, I see your problem here, mate. You got too much furniture on this side of the room.
I love that.
Yeah.
That was your lesson. I keep missing to low and to the left.
I just assumed there was something fundamental that I was doing wrong. He was like, well, just aim up and to the left, you'll be fine.
Oh, wow. Thank goodness you were here. I could have never parsed that one out.
The other part about that still cracks me up a little bit is that he handed us the bows, and then he handed us the bows, and about 8 seconds later, he gave the one big safety piece of advice, which is when you pull the bowstring back and release it, keep your left elbow away from the bowstring.
Yes.
But in that 8 seconds, I went...
And your forearm was never the same.
Oh, my giddy godfathers, did that hurt.
Oh, yes. I remember my grandfather used to have several bows and a lot of arrows. And so I used to do some archery in his property when I was a kid. And it would always, if you weren't wearing that arm protector.
Right.
See, he didn't tell me keep your elbow out. He just said wear this protector. So
right, that also would work. It was, if it whacks into the protector, it's the protector that's getting hurt, not you.
Yes,
but
yes.
I can assure you, if you hit your arm, it hurts a lot.
It stings.
So I've been to the beach. We've had Labor Day in the United States, which again, as I've said before, you get it all back to front. You do Labor Day is in May, and Veterans Memorial type day should be at the end of the summer, but you do it the wrong way around. So you do it, and you start the week on Sundays.
Yeah, that one I really I'm born and raised here, and I don't like that one. In my mind, it always starts on Monday anyway. So.
Right? Yeah. But because it was Labor Day weekend, we went with our friends to the beach, and we had a rare old time. But I was telling you yesterday that Carson had quite the spill.
Yes, you did tell me this.
The funniest thing about it is how utterly calm the sea was. The sea it was like a lake. There was no movement at all. And Carson managed to find this one wave that just picked her up and slammed her chin first into the beach. And she looks a little beaten and bruised from it.
Yes, I'm sure. This sand's rough when it slams you down like that.
Oh, yeah. But we had a very nice time, and we were grateful to our friends for inviting us.
That is great. I'm glad you guys had a good time. We had it was a momentous week this week. Molly had her second Monday of her senior year of high school. I've been waiting all week just to use that one joke, and I almost forgot it. I was going to open with that joke. Yes.
Was that it? I thought that was part one of
No,
two,
that was it. I just wanted to use that joke.
Well played. Well, let's get down to business. How did we leave Jaime Lannister? Last we saw of Jaime, he was setting off to King's Landing with the Bolton's men, including Qyburn, the fallen maester. But after a night on the road and a troubled dream, he insisted that they return to Harrenhal. Jaime then saved Brienne from the bear that she'd been forced to fight by Vargo Hoat, who was still mad about his ear that Brienne bit off? Bit
not entirely off, but bit a chunk off of.
Bit a chunk off, nasty. And now, having been saved, she joined the party heading south to King's Landing. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right, in this summary, nope, this is just me.
I was going to say, this is you, surely.
Yeah. No one else. Anyway, so Jaime, Brienne, and company can see and smell King's Landing in the near distance. Jaime trots back to give Brienne the news. She succeeded in her mission of returning him to his family, if minus a hand. A despondent Brienne reminds Jaime that this was only half of her mission.
Both Jaime and Brienne received terrible news on the journey from Harrenhal to King's Landing. Brienne learned of Catelyn Stark's death, making it impossible for her to fulfill her promise of returning Cat's girls to her. Jaime learned that his firstborn son was murdered at his own wedding feast. Brienne had been devastated by the news. Jaime, on the other hand, cannot seem to get too emotional over Joffrey's death.
Jaime's primary source of sadness is a thought of Cersei in mourning. As for Joff, well, if the gods gave him a choice of his right hand back or his son, the choice would be easy. Joff lived and died believing that Robert Baratheon was his father. Along with the news of Joff's death came the rumor that it was Tyrion who killed him. Now, this is distressing, and a story Jaime refuses to believe.
Jaime and his caravan pass through a city gate full of farmers hoping to sell their wares in the city. The group enter the Red Keep and meet 3 of his Kingsguard brothers, 2 of whom earned their white cloaks after Jaime left the city. All are shocked to see him, but Ser Loras is more shocked to see Brienne. He accuses her of murdering Renly and demands to fight her on the spot.
Brienne pleads her innocence, but Loras isn't buying her "a shadow did it" story. Jaime diffuses the situation and has Brienne sent to a tower cell to appease Loras. He then makes for the Sept and Cersei. At the Sept gate, he has a run-in with Sir Osmond Kettleblack, who fails to recognize him at first.
Cersei is alone in the Sept aside from Joffrey's body. She can hardly believe her eyes at the sight of Jaime. Jaime goes to his mourning twin. They embrace, and she notices his shaved head. He says the hair will grow back. He then shows her his right stump and tells her the hand won't. Cersei blames the Starks, but he corrects her. It was Vargo Hoat's doing.
The conversation turns to their dead son. Cersei tells Jaime that Tyrion did it. He told her that he was going to do it, and he did. She wants Jaime to avenge Joffrey's death and kill Tyrion. Jaime's going to need a bit more info first. Cersei says he will. There's to be a trial. The twins then get down to what they do best, right there in front of their dead son's body.
Not necessarily best, but most often.
I guess, yes.
Afterward, Cersei says it was dangerous what they did and they must be more careful, especially with their father in the castle. Jaime, on the other hand, is sick of being careful. He asks Cersei to wed him and let the world know their love. Cersei thinks Jaime has lost his mind. Tommen's claim to the throne derives entirely from Robert. Jaime doesn't care. They'll move to Casterly Rock and Tommen will be his heir. Let their father sit the throne.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. Cersei's heard enough. She sends him away, suggesting that he go to their father. Feelings hurt, Jaime does as he's told. He finds his father in his solar. Tywin had been expecting Jaime sooner. He got the news of Jaime's release from Riverrun through Varys soon after it happened. Tywin had sent men to find him, but he hadn't gotten the news of Jaime's missing right hand. Jaime says it was the Lord of Harrenhal, Vargo Hoat's work. Tywin informs him Hoat is no longer the Lord of Harrenhal. The Mountain took the castle from him with little effort.
Clegane found Hoat sitting alone, fevered and in pain. A wound to his ear had festered. Jaime can't wait to tell Brienne that news. Jaime assures Tywin he can fight just as well with his left hand as his right. Tywin goes to present Jaime with a gift, but Jaime isn't interested at the moment. He wants to know of Joffrey's death and Tyrion's involvement. Tywin says it was poison, as there was no obstruction in his throat, and that Tyrion served the king poisoned wine in front of all in attendance.
Jaime questions whether Tywin would actually execute his own son. Tywin says they must consider the evidence. Jaime knows what kind of evidence will be cooked up in this city of liars. Besides, now 2 kings have conveniently died right when Stannis needed them to. Tywin isn't interested in conspiracy theories. However, he is interested in getting his heir back. He tells Jaime that he can't serve in the Kingsguard without his sword hand. And Cersei set precedent for the Kingsguard not serving for life when she removed Barristan Selmy on grounds of age.
When Jaime talks of his duty to the Kingsguard, Tywin reminds him he has a duty to his house. Jaime will be heir to Casterly Rock. He will go there and take Tommen with him to get him away from his mother. On top of that, Tywin wants to marry Jaime to Margaery Tyrell and Cersei to Oberyn Martell. Jaime explodes. He will do no such thing, nor will Cersei. He's the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard and nothing more. After a very long, tense silence, Tywin tells Jaime he is not his son. If Jaime is the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard and nothing else, then go do your duty, sir.
What parent hasn't had that kind of conversation with their son?
Usually followed by some regrets over that which was said. But
Yes.
I'm figuring Tywin's not cut from the same cloth as the rest of us.
Yeah. I hope it's just, just anger in the moment, and they will both cool off, and it will be water under the bridge.
The first thing you've written here in the discussion is that this was the long-awaited re-arrival in King's Landing of Jaime. But in many ways, I think, as a reader, I was more interested in Brienne's arrival in King's Landing, because she's the one who's got something to do now. Jaime, all things being equal, I expected Jaime to go back to being Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, and probably wanting to shtup his sister. But Brienne has a task here,
She did anyway.
Right.
Now, both of her objects of the task have left the city.
Right.
And she doesn't know where either of them have gone.
Right, that's right. And also, the point where she's supposed to complete the task is also gone.
Yes.
She's supposed to take the two of them to Catelyn.
Yes.
She has neither of them and no Catelyn left to
Yeah. Her mission truly has become impossible at this point. She
Yeah.
she has no idea where either kid is, and the person she's supposed to bring him back to is no longer living. So, but we did get to see both Jaime and Brienne learn about the red and purple weddings while on the road from King's Landing to Harrenhal. They had what appears to be different impacts on the two.
Right. And of course, they should have been the other way around, given the closeness of the relatives involved.
Yes.
It was a lady you've known for a few months and your son.
Right,
but
your firstborn son.
Brienne is the one who's utterly devastated by the news, and Jaime's like, ho-hum.
Yeah, well, boy, Cersei's going to be upset.
Yes, that is exactly where his mind went. He went, ho-hum, I'd rather get my hand back, but Cersei.
I was surprised at how well the rumor mill got some of the key details right.
You know what? That's a consistent thing in this story. Every time we've had this, there's been the grains of truth have been in there.
Yes,
often scattered amongst the stories, but always there.
Right, not the Tyrion opening his throat. That was what one of the people were saying.
Incorrect.
The big chalice. Sansa's blame and disappearance and Joff's face turning purple.
Yeah.
All pretty accurate. So, that's like you said, it does seem to be a case that there's a lot of truth in the rumors that you hear in Westeros. There must be a really good rumor mill in Westeros.
You don't have Netflix? You spread rumors.
Right.
So his feelings towards Joffrey, of course, are complex, and it's not something that's been sort of talked about very much. I mean, he is his firstborn son, but as Jaime thinks, he didn't really care about him because he was never allowed to treat him like his son.
Right.
Partly Joffrey lived and died always believing that Robert was his father, despite the noise around him to the contrary.
Yes.
He presumably didn't believe it.
And, Jaime wonders if because he's not feeling the sadness he feels like he should feel, if he's possibly the monster that everyone claims he is. But, certainly he's not going to win Father of the Year, but neither was Robert going to win that.
No.
And
no. I mean, literally, they did it almost exactly the same as father for Joffrey, with one notable exception. Jaime actually created the child.
Right, biologically. Yeah. Yes. And his reaction's definitely not what a typical father would feel in this situation. But, Joff lived his whole life thinking that Jaime was just his uncle. And, possibly he saw what an awful person Joffrey was, and that further caused him to be emotionally distant from Joff. Yeah.
He has precedence here. He witnessed what Aerys was like.
Oh, yes, he did.
and
Yes.
took action to stop that. So maybe he's thinking, this has saved me from another round 2 of the kingslaying.
Yeah, and we've heard the comparisons. Both Tyrion and Tywin had made comparisons about Joffrey being another Aerys the Second.
Right,
And
right.
the first thing that Jaime does when he gets into the sept with Cersei is he thinks that Joffrey's going to need every one of those prayer candles of the hundreds that are burning,
Right,
which
right.
is just kind of more indication that he's aware of what Joff was, which seems to be unlike
Yeah,
Joffrey's mother thinks
yeah.
or was aware of.
And as you mentioned, Jaime's primary concern is for Cersei, he doesn't, not Joffrey. So he really does love her. There's no question about that. But the difference between Jaime and Cersei is that Jaime also really loves Tyrion,
Right.
and that's going to cause problems, I think, down the line because Jaime is going to be inclined to believe Tyrion, and
Agreed.
Cersei is going to be very much inclined to not believe Tyrion.
Also agreed.
Yeah, and so the the question for me is, can this love that he feels for Cersei survive that? Because if she insists on Tyrion's death, that's going to hurt Jaime very, very much.
Yes.
And it started to make me think. I actually think in some ways it will. I think that his love for her would survive anything because he can't help himself. He's blindly in love with her
Yeah,
and would forgive her just about anything.
I could see your point.
And then that got me thinking about me and you. And I think that you might be like Jaime. I think you might be your relentless sentimentality is a sign of how deeply you love your loved ones.
I see your point.
And I, on the other hand, I think I am not Cersei exactly, but kind of Tyrion. That my love is somewhat contingent. I don't love as deeply, and I have sort of expectations around my love, and I also everything's contingent. If someone were to cross me, they could lose my love, whereas you would forgive.
Just keep rolling on. Rolling
Exactly,
on with let the love flow over.
Yeah. So there you go.
I see.
That's my little theory that you're Jaime Lannister.
To our sustainers who were on the call last night, this is the comparison I was referring to during last night's call.
No, I didn't know. I didn't know what you were talking about.
Yes, this is what I was referring to.
Mm-hmm.
So he is sure that he would choose, and by he I mean Jaime, obviously, is sure that he would choose his hand over Joff. And I have to respect him being honest with himself. He could lie to himself and say, I would give up my other hand to get my son back, but he's being honest with himself, and I respect that. It certainly shows a selfish side, but again, he never truly bonded with Joff in any meaningful way, and by Cersei's doing, he explains that he was never even allowed to hold Joffrey as a boy, but also seemingly he had no interest in Jaime's part in getting to any sort of even on the down low fatherly relationship with Joff. He could have taken Joff into the yard and trained with him. I mean, uncles do that kind of thing. He could have taken Joff hunting or whatever.
Yeah, but Cersei put him off it because Cersei was concerned that the more they were seen together, the more it would look like there was something wrong. Even though you're absolutely right, there's nothing more natural than an uncle, looking after a nephew, particularly a nephew who's being ignored by his father.
Right.
But I do take Cersei's point on this one because the more you see the two of them together, the more you think, wow.
Wow, he is a spitting image of him. I was thinking that given the chance, I think Tyrion might have been the more caring, better role model than Jaime or Robert if he had been given that opportunity.
Tyrion always tried to better Joffrey.
Yes, much to his own detriment.
Right, exactly. I mean, he tried to make Joffrey a better person. I mean, often brutally. I remember him slapping him to make him go and give his sorrow to the Starks over Bran's fall. But you should do that. And someone should tell you to do that. And if necessary, slap you to get you to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
So Brienne, as we said, has gone pretty numb since learning of the Red Wedding. Her mission's completely broken. Jaime offers to return her to Tarth or get her a place in the Red Keep. Brienne thinks as a lady companion to Cersei would be a disaster for all involved. I'm pretty sure we can all agree on that.
I do agree on that, but there's one little piece of me wonders if Cersei might like having a female body, like a kind of like how the Hound was to Joffrey, a personal protector who is a big, strong, tough female. But
yes,
then I was thinking about her talking to Sansa during the Battle of the Blackwater, and it seemed as though she wasn't necessarily a feminist in the sense that she wanted better for all women. She just felt like she was special and wanted better for herself, and that she was different than all other women. So I don't know.
It would generally be convenient because, like, for instance, when you were bathing or getting changed, she could be in the room with you. So for that reason. But it would be difficult to imagine Brienne hearing of the things that Cersei has done to the Starks and being very forgiving.
Yeah, I don't know that there'd be a way for. I don't know that their personalities would mesh in any way. But I did wonder if Cersei might be like, yeah. That would, I would be interested in that as long as she is my protector and not like a lady in waiting or something.
Right. Jaime thinks about a place in the Gold Cloaks, and I'm not sure she would really fit in with them. She's way too upstanding to be a Gold Cloak.
I had the same thought. I worried about her treatment among those largely uncouth men. But, she wouldn't have been a good fit under Slynt, for the Gold Cloaks under Slynt. Way too corrupt for her. She would have been probably a pretty good fit under Jacelyn Bywater. He seemed to be a pretty upstanding, honorable man, and she might have been able to get behind that.
Yeah.
And the current commander of the Gold Cloaks is Adam Marbrand, and he also seems fairly honorable. He fights for the Lannisters, so that kind of paints him in a negative light for us, but all the details that I can recall, he seems like a pretty decent guy.
Right.
So
yeah, that's a good point. That's true. I think Slynt's stint as the leader of the Gold Cloaks has coloured them for us. They are
yes.
They're always tarnished by that time. You're right. There have actually been some fairly upstanding leaders. Of course, the thing about that is one rotten leader can make the rank and file rotten forever.
Yes. It creates a culture, and the only way to get rid of that culture is to remove the people that bought into that toxic culture.
Slynt was probably just about everybody.
Yes, right. So Lord Clement Piper, we learn, sent an envoy to bend the knee to Joffrey. We learn this from the guard at the gate, and the guard at the gate also tells Jaime and Still Shanks Walton that others have come to do the same. And we had conjectured that many river lords would find it hard to resist now that Robb is dead, Edmure is captured, and a large amount of the Riverlands and Northern Army has died. So, and we also learned that other lords had been captured and not killed at the Red Wedding. It mentions, the guard mentions to Jaime that Mark Piper, who is Clement's son, was captured at the Red Wedding, not killed. And Mark's been around since he was one of the knights reporting to Ned about the mountain raiding the Riverlands, which is when Ned sent Beric Dondarrion on his quest.
Endless quest.
Yes.
I mean, literally endless for Beric Dondarrion. Not even death.
Not even death can stop it, yeah. I will say, in the Piper's defense, they did fight hard against the Lannisters. But, when Mark was captured, Edmure captured, Brendan Blackfish Tully is stuck in River Run. I can't really blame them for raising the white flag at this point.
No, nor can I. So they come through the Gate of the Gods. There's a long line of farmers waiting to sell their produce. So the city seems to be bouncing back to what it was pre-war, which is good for the people, I suppose.
Yes. The Gate of the Gods. So remember, King's Landing is kind of like a diamond. The northern. There's a point at the north, a point at the west, east, and south. The Gate of the Gods is on the western corner. It's where the king's road runs into
Yeah.
King's Landing. And so I was thinking about it. There's a lot of carts. Like, there's a line. I think he says a couple dozen maybe or so carts waiting to get in. And then when he gets in past them, there's people selling all kinds of stuff. And so I'm thinking either some of the places in the Riverlands fared better than what Arya saw, or it must be coming from Stokeworth or some other Crown's Land area that escaped the majority of the fighting and destruction. Because the places Arya saw, they would not have had some of the largest pumpkins that Jaime had ever seen.
And you're talking about that as opposed to the Reach, because from the Reach they would be coming along the Rose Road.
Yes.
Ah, interesting.
Yes, they wouldn't come. You wouldn't come through the Gate of the Gods if you were coming from the Reach. It just
Good call.
You'd be coming in the. You're going way out of your way to get to that gate.
I guess the farmland closest to King's Landing was not really troubled by the war, but the further you went, the worse it got. So, yeah, still bodes ill for the winter.
Yes, yes, and I'm sure prices are at an all-time high for everything.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that quite a few people completely recognize Jaime, despite his changed appearance, but quite a few others don't recognize him. I mean, Cersei has no trouble. She immediately sees who it is, even in presumably slightly gloomy sept.
Yeah, I thought about that. She would recognize her twin's just general shape. You know, his gait, his
but he's been gone for more than a year, right?
He's been gone since after the attack on Ned in the streets. He fled after that, so that's been a long while. I should have looked up
on the timeline on this, but I'm betting that's got to be close to a year now.
I think that you're probably right. At least a year. I would guess it's at least a year.
Yeah, we've only had one New Year that we remember.
Yes, and
which was just recent.
We just had a New Year just a few days ago. Yeah, I think you're probably pretty close to right. It being a year, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. But I would think if it is your twin, and couple that with your twin who also happens to be your lover.
Yes, couple that with the coupling, yes.
Yes. I feel like, because I thought about it, everyone else was kind of like, Jaime? But she got it right away from a distance, probably in a kind of darkish room. So yeah, I think it's believable that she would have recognized him.
Another person who recognizes him quickly is Loras, but he meets some new brothers of the Night's Watch, right? So Osmond Kettle Black is new to him, and Balon Swan as well was not Kingsguard when he.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
Left.
Yes, and he surely knew Loras before he became one of his brothers, because he jousted with him in the famous match where the Valyrian steel dagger traded hands. But Loras Tyrell joined after the Battle of the Blackwater. That's when the Tyrells showed up. Balon Swan replaced Preston Greenfield, who died in the riot.
Yep.
And then Osmond Kettleblack joined when Sir Boris Blunt was stripped of his role for not protecting Tommen when Jocelyn Bywater took him on Tyrion's command on the way to Rosby. Do you remember all that? So all 3 of them have joined well after Jaime's departure from the city.
So Loras, of course, has not forgiven Brienne for killing Renly. I will say Brienne sticking to her story is kind of like slightly convincing of her innocence. There's a great out now. She could say, Catelyn Stark did it,
right, and
forced me to become her protector. I'm glad she's dead.
Yes, that is a story she could have gone with. Like Jaime says, even my horse could have come up with a better story than this one about Stannis' shadow killed Renly.
Yes. So, but then the decision to lock her up is slightly odd, I feel like. It's presumably primarily for her own safety, to keep her away from Loras. But also, I mean, I mean, what's the crime, really? I mean, given the fact that Joffrey's just been murdered, who cares what happened to Renly, the usurper, Renly Baratheon?
Right. I think it's all about Loras. You know, Loras clearly had love for Renly, and whether they were lovers or not, it certainly seems like they were. Or at least there's a lot of rumors that they were. But regardless, he loved Renly as a person, and Jaime thinks she should be blowing me kisses because she looks hurt when he has Balon Swan take her to a tower cell, and he thinks he doesn't understand why does nobody get what I'm doing for them? It all goes back to Aerys. And I was thinking, it all goes back to the fact that you never tell anyone why you've done something. If you had said to Brienne, I'll come visit you shortly, it's all going to be fine, or something like that, or if you had said, I killed Aerys because he was about to blow up the entire city and kill 500,000 people, maybe people wouldn't be so confused about why you do the things that you do. So, but, so Loras was so angry about Renly's death that he mentions here that Aemon Kai said that it was Brienne that killed Renly with his dying breath. Oh, and the reason why Aemon Kai was having a dying breath is because Renly was so upset. Is because Loras was so upset about Renly's death that he killed Robar Royce and Aemon Kai, who were the two that were guarding him outside of his tent.
Right. What you brought up the possibility that Renly and Loras were lovers. Jaime makes that accusation here. He actually says that he would put the sword places that even Renly hadn't gone, which clearly suggests that.
Yes.
I mean, making that accusation is, making that joke is one thing, but making it to Loras, and Loras barely even notices. Water off a duck's back for Loras, that.
Yeah, true. Yeah, he didn't react in any way.
Yeah.
I worry that we don't know what's going to happen to Brienne, but as long as she gets out of this situation, where being sent to this tower cell, I worry that it's going to make it even harder for her because she's already a bit of an outcast. She doesn't fit the social norms of Westeros. Clearly doesn't make friends easily, and now she's got this reputation that she killed Renly Baratheon.
It's good to have a friend called the Kingslayer, because that'll protect you a little bit. The Kingslayer and the Kingslayer.
That's right. Which Kingslayer?
So the twins are reunited, and it's sweet for a little while, and it's sad and mournful. I mean, Cersei is in the deepest of despair, and then Jaime's return is supposed to be joyful, but he is without a hand, and they are mourning over their child's body. So, and then it gets really creepy and weird.
It does. It definitely does get really creepy and weird. It's the first time since that Bran chapter, I think, that we actually saw them get down to such business. And it certainly wasn't from one of their POVs where we got all the thoughts that were going on. It was from Bran's confused POV about what was happening there. So this was the first time we really got a full look at what's going on between the two of them. But, one thing I noticed, well, actually, I shouldn't say I noticed, Jaime points out to us, is that Cersei didn't go to him when she realized it was Jaime. There wasn't that rushing into each other's arms scene that often happens with lovers in a reunion situation. She just stood there and waited for him to come to her, and he thinks it's the way it's always been. She waits, I go to her. And
given the situation, I'll give her a pass on that one, though. I
mean, she's deep in mourning, and yeah, sure, yeah. There's also got to be some learned behavior there over so many years. She waits. He goes to her.
But, if she'd been gone for a year and he was mourning over the body, she would have run to him.
You think she would have?
So, yeah.
Possibly.
Cersei, of course, insists that Tyrion is the one who killed Joffrey, and unfortunately, if you think about it, she does have some decent circumstantial evidence. Uh,
Yeah.
she says
Yes.
he
Yes, she
killed him
does.
just as she said he would, and when I think myself safe and happy, that my joy will turn to ashes in my mouth. Well, all of that stuff that Tyrion said now looks pretty damning.
It does. It does. He said that at lunch with Cersei when she, divulged that she had Alayaya captive, and that's why Cersei says to Jaime that he killed Joffrey for a whore
Right.
because she thinks that they're talking about Alayaya. And,
I, given actually just a thought on that. If somebody knows that, they should get a message to Alayaya quickly.
get out of
Get out
town.
of
Yes.
town. Yes.
Right, right. Both Tywin and Tyrion have thought and said that his big mouth would be his downfall someday, and maybe that was some foreshadowing over his big mouth providing a lot of evidence for why he
True.
might have
True enough.
killed the king here. Several instances of him threatening death to Joffrey, including in front of his family when he said, "Be careful, kings are dropping like flies just now."
That doesn't help. Yeah.
No, doesn't help. Doesn't help.
Now you noticed Jamie
Eh,
thinking something about Tyrion. What was that?
yeah. So Jaime thinks to himself, could Tyrion really have killed Joffrey? He knows he's my son. I love Tyrion. I've always been good to Tyrion, except that one time. But he doesn't know the truth about that.
Okay.
And surely it's referring to him setting Tyrion up with Tysha to help Tyrion lose his virginity, and then Tyrion went and fell in love. But the thing
Tyrion
about
does
that,
know about that.
yeah, because Jaime told Tyrion, Tywin had Jaime tell Tyrion, this was all set up. I did this to help you lose your virginity. So either he's misremembering, or there's more to this story that Tyrion doesn't know. That is the bit that Tyrion doesn't know.
Well, if you'll allow me to speculate,
Speculate away.
well, if Tywin makes anyone say something to anyone else, and then the person forced to say something later thinks the person does not know the truth, I'm going to assume that Tywin made Jaime lie.
That is a distinct possibility.
Mhm.
It surely is a distinct
Mhm.
possibility.
Where the lie begins and ends, I don't know. Because there's a lot
Right.
of story there, and what part of it is not true, I don't know. But that would be my suspicion. If Jaime thinks that Tyrion doesn't have the full truth of that story, that it's because what Jaime was made to say was coerced and untrue.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very, very possible.
But and primarily that is that she was a prostitute, right?
Right. That was
That's the
what Jaime
key
told
thing, yeah.
Tyrion, is that Tysha was a prostitute that he hired, cooked up this story to help Tyrion lose his virginity.
But could the true story be that he found a girl who wasn't a prostitute and coaxed her into hanging out with Tyrion? And, hey, he's second in line to Casterly Rock. You might want to be nice to him.
Sure. That's a possibility as well. We just don't know yet.
Okay. All right, fine.
But one thing we do know is that Jaime is sick of hiding his love for Cersei, and he straight up asks her to stand up and tell the world that it's him that she wants and marry him, and basically asking her to give up royalty and political position for him.
Yeah. He's had a long time in sort of isolation, and I wonder if that's sort of kind of terrible ideas can foster when you don't have a chance to discuss them with other people. And I
Right.
wonder if that's what's going on here. Maybe it works. I mean, the Targaryens did similar things, and it caused rifts in the church, but eventually they reestablished their grip on the land. But it feels like this would be. I mean, think about it. You immediately undermine your own claim to the throne.
Yes, that was that is Cersei's argument. She brutally rebuffs this idea, calls them stupid, and says it cost them everything.
Right. Yeah.
And that, yeah, like you're saying, that Tommen's right to the throne is derived from Robert, So, but, to Jaime, it's their relationship that is everything. Cersei clearly doesn't feel the same way about their relationship.
Right, true enough, yeah.
But, on the surface, the idea sounds, probably in Jaime's head, he's had a lot of time in a dungeon, a lot of time on the road. Probably feels like Lannisters are in a pretty strong place in the realm now.
True.
And they could handle this. But, the Tyrell alliance could be in jeopardy if they run afoul with the Faith here. You lose them, you lose the Reach, you lose the Stormlands because many will assume that Stannis was right and that Tommen is not a Baratheon and Stannis is the rightful heir to the throne. And that could give Stannis the boost that he so desperately needs, especially if he were to assure the Tyrells of their position as Lord Paramounts of the Mander is safe from, the Florence.
Who, of course, that's his in-laws. So I would want that written in very strong wording if I was the Tyrells.
Right. And in background, we'll see why the Jaime-Cersei pairing isn't the same as the Targaryens, and why it might not be looked upon as acceptably as Aerys and his wife Rhaella was here at the end of their dynasty.
Okay.
But Cersei senses a change in Jaime, and, it might be that he's been through so much to get to her, and then she just sends him away, and him realizing that maybe their desires no longer align.
Yeah. I don't think it changes Jaime's mind, though.
About how he feels about Cersei.
In fact, I think that becomes apparent in the later part of the chapter with Tywin.
Yeah.
Because to me, just jumping ahead, but to me, his rejection of Tywin's plan is based around him wanting to be with Cersei. Pure and simple.
Right.
If Tywin said Cersei's moving back to Casterly Rock,
right,
he'd be like, well, actually, I don't want to be Lord Commander of the Kingsguard anymore.
This left hand is useless.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't even hold that Valyrian steel dagger with this left hand, let alone a sword.
So obviously, the relationship between Jaime and Cersei is pretty revolting to everybody. There are some added facets thrown in here, so doing it while she has a visit from her Aunt Flo, and also over the body of their son of incest.
Right, yeah.
According to Jenny of Oldstones, this is distasteful. Arbiter of taste that she is.
Yes, I'm guessing she's not alone there.
So Tywin was meeting with Mace Tyrell and Oberyn Martell together. Talk me through this, Mackelly.
Well, it's just a big deal because there's such a dislike, mostly on the part of Mace, disliking Oberyn, because that's how Mace's heir and oldest son Willis was injured, was a tilt between Oberyn and Willis.
But Oberyn and Willis have buried the hatchet, right?
They exchanged letters and stuff, but Mace not so much. So either, or I don't know what they were talking about, but two possibilities that come to mind are maybe Tywin is making sure that the two are stable after the death of a king, because we don't need to be adding more issues to this full plate of we just had the death of a king. So you two be on your best behavior.
Right.
That is one option.
Yeah. And the second one is wedding proposals.
Right. Because both are brought up by Tywin as well, not Mace, but...
No, but Tyrells and Martells to marry Lannisters, yes?
Yes.
Specifically,
so
specifically Marjorie to Jaime and Oberyn to Cersei.
Yes.
Interesting. Obviously, Tywin's moving pieces there, and those are very solid alliances if you can forge them that way.
Yeah, it certainly would be.
The one thing I'll say is, it's a slightly weird thing to do if you're promising that to them, because there's a couple of things missing. First of all, Jaime Lannister is missing.
Right.
Second of all, Jaime and Cersei's buy-in to the plan is missing. And Tywin rules with a fist of iron, but his kids have minds of their own. Not just Tyrion.
They sure do. Yeah. I wondered if maybe Tywin is telling Jaime this plan, this marriage plan for Jaime and Cersei. I wonder if possibly he knows about something
Yes.
going on with Jaime and Cersei, and he's wanting to see how Jaime responds to this idea. And not necessarily that he would expect Jaime to be like, oh yeah, this is a great idea. But maybe he's hoping that he will say too much and give Tywin the proof that he's wondering about.
Yeah. Yeah. So Tywin did, of course, know that Jaime had been freed. He hadn't arrived back yet, so he could start to make wedding plans for him, I suppose.
Speaking of confirmation, we also get confirmation that the ghost of Highheart was spot on with another premonition. Now, we had a hunch that she was about to be spot on because we knew that Gregor Clegane was headed toward Harrenhal.
Oh, I know what you're going to say now.
Yeah, so one of the premonitions that the ghost of Highheart had was in the Hall of Kings, the goat sits alone and fevered as the great dog descends upon him. And we know that the mountain took Harrenhal easily, and Vargo Hoat, aka the goat, was sitting alone, half mad, with pain and fever from an infected wound.
Yeah.
And that the brave companions, in large part, abandoned him. So he was truly sitting alone, pain and fevered, which is pretty much spot on what the Ghost of Highheart said was going to happen.
Yeah.
Jaime's excited to tell Brienne about Vargo Hoat's ear, but he's not expecting her to be as excited about it as he is because she's so upset. And she's just not the kind of person that will be like, oh, that's really ironic. I get the humor in that, you know?
Well, it has cheered me up somewhat here in my cell.
Yes. And one thing Tywin tells, it's just this little detail. Tywin tells Jaime, he knows, he knew pretty early on that Jaime had been released from the dungeon at Harrenhal. And he says, I sent men into the Riverlands to look for you. One of the names he mentions is Samwell Spicer, who happens to be the cousin of Sybil and Rolf Spicer, who are Queen Jane's mother and uncle.
Oh, I know who the
So not
Spicers
all the Spicers have come over to Robb Stark's side. And if you recall, Grey Wind didn't like the family in general, but specifically really didn't like Rolf Spicer. And I just wonder if maybe there's some connection between...
I think you're onto something. Tywin's plan is to put Tyrion on trial for the murder of Joffrey. I think it's a dangerous thing because we saw what happened when Tyrion was put on trial in the Eyrie. He's still amongst us.
Right.
And a trial by combat, he might have someone like Jaime Lannister fighting for him. Although, honestly, Jaime's not such a great choice right now. But, you know.
Bronn might be a better option.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. How does this work? I mean, Jaime, his immediate thought is, in this den of liars, he knew what sort of evidence would be found.
Yeah.
So, you know, is it a good idea to be doing this? Why not just say, you know, the Maesters discovered that Joffrey choked, and then handle the situation in-house?
Yeah. Strangle him yourself.
Right. Why put such a black eye on the family publicly by having your son dragged through a trial for regicide of all things?
Yeah.
Now, if it was Cersei unchecked, surely this would be nothing but a kangaroo court.
Right.
You know, but, you know, with Tywin in charge, he doesn't exactly have the most fond feelings about.
But again, there is that little thread of maybe Tywin would like to hide his own crime here.
Right.
Finding Tyrion guilty of this would actually help to hide his own culpability, perhaps.
We did discuss that. And Jaime sees a possible flaw in the accusation when he's like, why would Tyrion poison Joffrey in front of everyone?
Right.
And how would he have, this is my own personal question, how would he have gotten that poison if this was a spur of the moment?
Right. Unless you just carry it around just in case. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Accidentally take it instead of like your Tums or something.
Yeah. So Tywin, again, you know, as we were saying, he's trying to get Jaime to leave the Kingsguard. He's been trying to get Jaime to leave the Kingsguard for 19 years now without success.
Right.
to become the heir of Castle Rock. And, he's already rejected Tyrion as heir to Castle Rock, so he really needs Jaime to say yes to this. He's got a whole plan for it. He's going to bribe the Faith to release the vow, marry Marjorie Tyrell. They then go to Castle Rock and take Tommen with them to get him away from Cersei, which probably would be good for Tommen, actually.
Agreed.
Squiring at Castle Rock with Marjorie and Jaime might actually be kind of good for it. Here's the thing. Here's the thing I'd like to talk about. I think Tywin knows what Jaime and Cersei get up to. I think deep down he knows. And deep down, therefore, he knows why Jaime wants to be in the Kingsguard. And he knows how, when he joined the Kingsguard and Cersei was taken from King's Landing, it was a real pain to him. If he really wants Jaime to leave the Kingsguard, all he has to do is take Cersei back to Casterly Rock.
Right.
Send her back. Name her his heir to Casterly Rock and send her back.
I see what you're saying.
And then say to Jaime, hey, you want to leave the Kingsguard now?
Right. If Jaime all of a sudden is all for it, then you might have uncovered a situation here. Yeah, like you said, Tywin had this whole thing planned out. I mean, all the way down to Marjorie and Jaime leaving for Casterly Rock with Tommen, and he's got to be pretty disappointed that it didn't go the way he was hoping that it would.
Beauty of my thought, really, actually, is that you don't even have to free Jaime from his vow. The King, Tommen, and Cersei are going to move to Casterly Rock for safety until Tommen is of age. I'm going to stay here as Hand of the King. The Lord Commander of the Kingsguard is going to protect the King in Casterly Rock.
Right. Yes. That's not a bad idea.
Everybody's happy. And somehow Cersei had a fourth child from Robert Baratheon.
So, being that we're talking about so much about Jaime's hand and the implications of it, Hoat's reasoning for cutting off his hand is kind of muddled, and I wondered, would it be helpful to refresh our memories as to why Vargo Hoat would have cut off Jaime Lannister's hand, knowing that this could be such a bad idea?
Well, I mean, it seemed like it was impetuousness, so...
Well, I can walk us through the details if you think it'd be helpful. Remember, it was Tywin that brought the brave companions to Westeros.
Yes.
Tywin left Harrenhal, and then Roose made a deal with the brave companions to join Roose's cause, and Roose would give Vargo Hoat Harrenhal.
Right.
Now, Hoat figured that Stannis would win the Battle of the Blackwater and confirm him as Lord of Harrenhal, which probably would have been very wrong on that assumption, but, whatever. When the brave companions captured Jaime, they cut off his hand to theoretically send the message to Tywin, but also to dishonor Roose, because Hoat was one of Roose's men when he did the deed. Now, why is he trying to discredit Roose? Because he's afraid that Roose would make a deal with Tywin after Tywin wins the Battle of the Blackwater and hand the brave companions over as traitors to the Lannisters. So he was attempting to discredit Roose and make it harder for an alliance between Roose and Tywin. On top of all that, he planned to sell Jaime to Rickard Karstark for Rickard's daughter's hand in marriage to become Lord of Karhold, getting him well away from the reach of Tywin. Of course, it all started to fall apart when Rickard was killed, and so that part of the plan wasn't going to happen. And so Roose explains all this to Jaime at that dinner with Jaime and Brienne and Roose, and asks Jaime to inform Tywin that Roose had no part in Hoat's plan, and this was just a guy who went out on his own to do this, and that's why he was letting Jaime go, so that, to help smooth over any rough feelings here. Now, Roose did still give Vargo Hoat Harrenhal when he left, but mostly that was because he knew that the Lannisters would easily be able to take it back. Yeah. So that's as I best I understand it, that is how all that went down.
Yes. But one interpretation of the whole Tywin's behavior at the end of this chapter for me is that he's recognizing that he can't keep Jaime from Cersei, that no matter what he does, they won't change their ways. And Jaime previously has been shown himself to willing to sacrifice everything for Cersei, and that feeling is undiminished with time. And this was a
Right.
last chance to get back into Tywin's good graces, and Jaime wouldn't even consider it. Didn't even take a day to think about it. Told him flat out no. And so Tywin washes his
Right.
hands of him right there and then. Says you're not my son, which is pretty. Like you said, there's no coming back from that.
Yeah, that's rough. I do hope that cooler heads prevail and the two of them can make up. And Jaime's got a Valyrian steel sword waiting for him. He almost got the gift, and then he was like, "Nah, I don't want to deal with any gifts right now."
That was the gift. Do we know that was the gift, or are you just hypothesizing? We can't know because it was Jaime's POV. He would have seen it.
Right.
Right.
But we do know that Tywin had
it. Yeah.
the sword made as a gift for Jaime. So you assume that's what he was going to give him there.
Well, give us some background, Mackelly. Why don't you?
All right. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I was gonna tell you why might not work out the way that Jaime would like him marrying Cersei and announcing it to the world. So, yes, Jaime wants to marry Cersei, as the Targaryens had done for centuries. And it is true that Targaryens did marry brothers to sisters, also uncles to nieces, and other types of interfamily options. However, until King Jaehaerys smoothed things out with the faith, the practice was not well received by the realm. As an example, the second Targaryen king of Westeros and the son of Aegon the Conqueror, King Aenys I, wed his son Aegon to his daughter Rhaena. The decision went over like a lead balloon with the rest of the realm. The faith denounced the union. Septon Murmison was expelled from the faith and later hacked to bits for performing the ceremony. The lords and small folk alike turned on King Abomination, as he was dubbed. At one point, during their procession after their wedding, Aegon and Rhaena were actually besieged at Crakehall, and this news caused King Aenys to take ill, and he eventually died a broken man, much because of the marrying of his children to each other. So, the issues with the Targaryens and the realm over incestuous marriages continued until Aenys' younger son, Jaehaerys, finally worked with the faith to craft what's called the doctrine of exceptionalism, which we've talked about way back in a Game of Thrones. So I'm going to tell you all this over again as a refresher. So the doctrine's basic principles were as such. The faith of the Seven had been born in Andalos, where the laws in the holy text said incest was an abomination. The doctrine backs this, but with one caveat. The Targaryens were not like other people, as they rode dragons and were the only ones to do so since the Doom of Valyria. In addition, they have their roots in Valyria, not Andalos, with different laws and traditions. The Targaryens wed brother to sister, as the Valyrians had always done, and since the gods made them this way, it wasn't for men to judge. And another key bit of exceptionalism is that the Targaryens were immune to common illness that could kill other men. So, to spread the word, they sent 7 speakers to preach the doctrine throughout Westeros.
Thank you, Mackelly. So, by the way, you guys will get the edited version of that, but it was absolute torture to listen to.
One sentence. That one sentence, I think, tripped me up like 5 times.
Comparison with the television show. To this point, I've been a bit jokey about the sex scene. Cersei raised a few logical objections, but she appeared to be a relatively willing participant. Not so much in the television show. I'll come to it, but I'll rewind a little to a decision that had some ramifications on this chapter. Brienne and Jaime arrived back in King's Landing a couple of episodes before the Purple Wedding. I didn't mention that because I didn't want it to be a spoiler that Jaime got back to King's Landing, but he was there at the Purple Wedding. Yeah, I think I mentioned there was a character there that I couldn't mention.
Okay.
I've read that this was done because they decided that Storm of Swords was too large for one series, so they wanted to accelerate some storylines to give all the characters something to do in season 3.
Sure.
But it felt like Jaime and Brienne had plenty in season 3, so I don't really understand it. Okay, fine. But anyway, it left a couple of challenging plot points. First, Jaime and Brienne don't seem to do anything about Sansa when they arrive. You see, the thing is, Brienne can't do anything about Sansa because she's absconded. But in the TV
Right.
show, she was there. But
There for the
she
picking.
didn't do anything. They mill around King's Landing, but the events of the Purple Wedding unfold with Brienne and Jaime standing around looking useless. Now, Sansa's marriage to Tyrion had complicated the issue for Brienne, but you'd at least have expected her to swear fealty to her or something like that.
Right.
Or, as an alternative, follow through on the Loras locking her up idea. That gives Brienne an excuse for not protecting Sansa, but that plot was dropped entirely. In fact, Loras doesn't notice Brienne's there, despite the fact he thinks she killed Renly. So the whole thing begins to look a bit stretched. Secondly, it all compounds and confuses the issue of Jaime's attitude towards Tyrion. In the book, he learns of Cersei's daft accusation, but in the show, he witnesses the crime and the pointing at Tyrion. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely a significant deviation because Jaime
sure is
no longer just relying on what Cersei tells him. He saw it for himself. And lastly, the sex scene with Cersei. It made no sense in the TV show because Jaime hadn't just arrived. It made a certain amount of sense, and it was revolting, but it made sense in the book because he just arrived after a year away. But the show compounded the daftness by making it very rapey. And if Jaime is on a redemption arc, which he kind of seems to be, there's no redemption from raping your sister over the body of your child.
Agreed.
So, I don't know. That whole thing made it very difficult. The Tywin and Jaime scene was deferred until season 4. So this is what I'm saying, you see. This book was split over season 3 and season 4. And it did include the presentation of the Valyrian steel sword, but it ended much the same. Jaime waves the sword around with his left hand a little bit, but he can't put it back in the scabbard, and Tywin has to help him.
Oh, goodness.
But the content of the discussion is very, very similar. He absolutely refuses to budge.
Well, so much of this is vastly different.
It's not vastly different. I mean, the big ticket things happen, but the decisions that they made in the TV show cast a pall over the whole thing, which is different.
Right. Jaime coming back, seeing his sister, they're both emotional. Relations happen over their dead son's body. I mean, that's terrible on so many levels, but compared to the TV show where he'd been around for weeks and then he just decides to rape his sister over his son's dead body, that is very, very different situation. And I didn't remember that. I've stopped watching the show so that I can have only book canon. Yeah. I didn't remember that.
But the thing is, it's just so strange to me because Jaime and Cersei had plenty going on in Storm of Swords. You didn't need to accelerate their timeline, I don't think. It would have been perfectly fine for them to arrive, and all the Purple Wedding had already happened.
Sure.
So
yeah, it doesn't seem like Jaime and Brienne brought anything to the Purple Wedding that they needed to be there for it.
Apart from kind of, they were sort of like ghosts at the feast. It was like, what are those two people doing here? Why isn't the tall lady escorting the red-haired child out of here at 100 miles an hour?
Right.
All right. Pedantry. I don't know. I mean, the whole sex scene is just. I mean, it's character choices, but it's. I don't know. It's very strange. Yeah, I don't have anything to say, really. It's not real pedantry. Anything?
I've got nothing.
All right, news and notes. Well, we had a really great time having a video chat with our Lord Paramounts and Royal Kingsguard last night. It was really fun. It was really entertaining. And what are you laughing at?
Yes, because the best part of the whole thing was the last 5 seconds.
You see, for those who don't know, the whole video is there's a timer that ticks down, and the video just ends at that timer. And
it ticks down to 1 minute, then it just says under a minute.
So we don't know, but we know we've only got a minute left. And I started singing with 5 seconds and I got exactly one word out before the phone.
Yes,
the call ended.
And you were exactly how you were trying to time it too. People were trying to coax you into singing, and you kept stalling and stalling and stalling, and then right as you sang, it ended. It was quite funny, quite funny.
Yep.
But some of the other topics we discussed how Littlefinger got the Valyrian steel dagger. We came up with some theories about that, and we talked about how about people that we know that are related to famous people.
Greenfire knew Led Zeppelin.
Led Zeppelin's daughter? The drummer's daughter.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Best buds with Led Zeppelin in my book.
Yes, right. And of course, we know the niece of a very famous person. And one of the things we discussed was the Game of Thrones battle episodes versus plot-driven episodes.
Yeah, it was interesting that everybody, I think, was roughly on the same page. It seemed like the battles were fun, but the real meat of it is the characters and the discussions and the.
Yes, I completely agree with that. So, yeah, we have a great time. It's always so much fun. And so, speaking of Buy Me a Coffee and our sustainers, we're planning to make some changes to our Buy Me a Coffee tiers in the near future. So, we're just kind of giving you a heads up that if you like a particular tier and have been on the fence about joining, now will be a good time to do so. Once you're in a tier, you get what you were promised when you joined, regardless of what
even
changes
if we rename that
make.
tier, you'll still have it. Yeah.
Yes, and if you like a different tier, you could always move to a different tier, but you will be locked into that tier. So if you're on the fence about joining, and I might be biased, but I would suggest that you do consider joining, now might be the time to do it.
I agree. All right, so let's conclude. So it feels like Jaime and Tywin really are sundered forever, unless Tywin can find it in him to apologize. Doesn't sound like Tywin to me.
It does not.
And I really do think that Jaime's sole motivation is proximity to Cersei, and so Tywin is missing a trick here. I honestly think Tywin suspects, knows, but he can't bring himself to use her as bait.
Your idea is spot on.
But that's the thing. He can't bring himself to use it as bait because he doesn't want to encourage it.
Yeah, he could do the reverse of what he said. Did you say he could leave Tommen in King's Landing with him?
Well, I said no. Send Tommen with his mother to Casterly Rock, while he's
trying to get those two away from each other.
But yeah, he could leave Tommen there, and he could raise Tommen as his regent. Yeah,
right. Yeah, you're onto something. Now, there's one word that is the very last word that Jaime says in the chapter. There's this long, tense silence between the two of them. And Jaime says, "Father," and that's when Tywin snaps and says, "You are not my son. You say you only want to be Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. Well, do your duty, sir." And I was wondering if that father was Jaime starting to cool down and be like,
maybe.
I'm sorry that didn't come out how I meant it to come out. And so I'm kind of hoping that cooler heads will prevail, as I've said a few times. Maybe, Jaime was just hangry.
You're very generous to want this to work out because...
well, it's a father and a son,
You see? That's you with your boundless love. Jaime and Cersei, they're becoming more self-destructive and nihilistic, it seems to me. And if he presses his idea of being open, then I don't know. I don't know if Cersei talks him out of it or if they do it and they plunge the realm into turmoil again. Anyway, I don't like the way that's going.
No, I agree. Where does it go from here? Will he do his usual forget about his own desires for her? Or will they find themselves at an impasse? Has he decided, you know what? If you don't want to be with me the way I want to be with you, then I don't want to be with you anymore. Yeah. We're assuming that his love for Cersei is going to triumph over all, but maybe he's like, I've had enough of this. Both of you two, I'm going back to Riverrun.
Maybe he's more like me, after all.
Yeah. Yes, maybe. I feel bad, poor Tywin. That conversation couldn't have gone any worse than what he probably envisioned it going in his mind.
Right,
you know? He was thinking, I've got this all planned out. I doubt he was thinking Jaime's going to love the idea of marrying Marjorie Tyrell. and leaving the Kingsguard. But I guess he figured he doesn't have a sword hand anymore. I'm going to convince him of this. We're going to get everything straightened out. It's going to go so well. And boy, did not at all.
Yeah. Things are a bit harsh on Brienne. She's very depressed and now has been arrested for a crime she didn't commit. And Loras's unforgivingness really sort of compounds the suspicion that Renly meant more to him than just a king.
Yes.
So
agreed.
If Loras was doing a bit of PR, he might think about that.
Yeah. I feel for Brienne. She seems so sad and despondent in this chapter. I hope she can find, I feel for her. She finally had a purpose. She's had two. She had, she was part of Renly's Rainbow Guard, and then Renly died. And then she became Catelyn's sworn sword, and she got this mission from Catelyn, this quest to go bring Jaime to King's Landing and bring back her Cat's daughters. And now that's all fallen apart. And it feels like just every quest she takes on ends in disaster and with the person she's serving dead.
Yeah.
But
where are we going next week, Mackelly?
So next week we are finally leaving King's Landing after what feels like a month and a half. Oh wait, it's been about a month and a half. Yeah. So we are actually off to Dragonstone, where Davos is up to something, and you're gonna want to tune in and find out what he's up to.
All right. There's 4 ways that you could help us. You could leave us a positive review to help spread the word. If you could, particularly on Apple Podcasts, that would be awesome. People don't listen to us on Apple Podcasts because we don't have enough reviews, so people don't think we're a good podcast. On other platforms, we've got a lot of reviews and people listen to us, but we fall behind on Apple because we don't have enough reviews. So anything you could do to help us would be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely.
You could buy merchandise at ghostsofharrenhall.threadless.com. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhall, or consider joining the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tiers, King Knight of the Realm or Lord Paramount, and you'll help to keep us going, and you get some really cool perks and grandfathered into those perks if we change these tiers later on. Or you can just make a donation at our website, ghostsofharrenhall.buzzsprout.com.
And, if you're looking to keep up on the latest news and information from Ghosts of Harrenhal, you could go out and follow us on our social media accounts. We're on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.